Hello, everyone, and welcome, Zvika. My name is Enat Weidberg. I'm also a partner at the Technology, High-Tech and M&A Department of Shibolet. And it is my pleasure to host here Zvika Slovin. Zvika has been my client for the past 12 years or so, Zvika.
Yeah,
so,
many years.
many years. And we've done, we worked with many healthcare or life science companies together. We actually sold 4 of them during the past years. And Zvika used to be a VP at Elron, one of Israel's leading investment companies. He led the life science field there. He's also an ex-entrepreneur. Now he's acting a bit as an investor, a bit as chairman of a few other companies that he finds interesting. And I thought that his point of view would be interesting about the healthcare environment here in Israel and where this market is heading to. So a few statistical facts. Israel, after all, we have a lot of Jewish people here, a lot of hospitals and a lot of doctors. So we have many life science companies here in Israel. Only for the traditional medical companies, we have above 1,300 incorporated during the last decade. And according to the statistics that we gathered in 2019, above $1.3 billion were invested in medical startups. So it's a very large portion of the Israeli high-tech industry. Up until now, we've seen traditional allocation of this market to all kind of traditional medical devices company, drug company, therapeutic companies, diagnostic companies. But now, for us as lawyers, we see some kind of shifting from traditional sectors that we knew to all kinds of new allocations and fields. For 2019, we see things like bioinformatic companies, biological companies, agrobiotic companies. I mean, names that I didn't even know how to spell a few years ago. And I wanted Zvika to let us know whether there is a real shifting and change, or it's only our impression looking aside from our offices here in Tel Aviv.
Right. So thank you, Einat, for having me today. That's a big question, and while thinking on how to respond to that, I decided to focus on the era being the era of convergence, where the fields of diagnostics, therapeutics, care, and even payment are converging to combined models of care and subsequent economies. These convergence will change the way corporate decisions are made, basically. As the biotechnology industry matures, as an example, more emphasis will be placed on clinical trials requiring even closer collaboration with top-flight hospitals, which are absent nowadays. Pharmaceutical design relies heavily on software and computer system talent that is now found in many non-medical regions that would need to migrate into this. Then the healthcare sector will become even more specialized and demand for new services, operations that don't exist today in that sense. And I might add that lastly, that different medical sectors not known for being technology hubs, such as accountable care organizations, private clinics, and so on, will require more sophisticated and specialized toolboxes that would deliver those new expected services.
And so there is a change, and life is changing, and a few years from now we'll see new kind of, I mean, the companies that are now, that we look at them as healthcare companies, the conversion shall occur, the shifting shall be made. Why? I mean, looking at the world today, what are the reasons for this new trend that you just described?
Well, I would put it this way. There is a two tidal wave which dictates this coming change. The first is no less than a tectonic movement in the reimbursement philosophy, moving away from procedure-based reimbursement to, and probably volume-based reimbursement, towards clinical outcome one, in sense that we will pay if you do well, a sort of thing. So that's a major change that's taking place. The other tidal wave, as I see it, is precision medicine. Science and medicine have come to understand that one size do not fit all. And in that sense, precision medicine is an emerging approach for disease treatment and prevention that takes into account individual variability in genes, environment, lifestyle for each person. So it is suggested that this approach will allow doctors, researchers to predict more accurately which treatment and prevention strategies for a particular disease will work and on which population groups. So it is, I have to emphasize that it is in contrast, in complete contrast to the one size fits all approach, which disease treatment strategies are developed for the average person. That would not no go any longer. So those are the two major drivers for change.
So the trend of one size doesn't fit all. I mean, as you mentioned, we see it all around us. I mean, it's kind of a global philosophy those days, and it actually affects science as well, and the way that this field will develop over the next coming years. And do you think that those changes, I mean, the healthcare market shall react to those changes? I mean, how would you see the ecosystem, the hospitals, the clinics, the doctors? I mean, how will the market as a whole shall react to those philosophical changes in perception of healthcare?
Yeah, well, I'll categorize this into like a category 5, like a tornado, a category 5 reaction. The first is a shift in health delivery from hospital to ambulatory settings. Healthcare delivery will continue to move away from inpatient to outpatient facilities where we can see the economy works best. Most surgeries and diagnostic procedures that historically have required an inpatient hospital stay will be performed more safely and efficiently in an outpatient setting. The second is consolidation, and consolidation will continue industry-wide, no other way. More healthcare entities will continue to merge together. The belief that value-based care models require single unified entities as opposed to more contractual-based ventures to succeed. And the one lustrous example that I might provide is the healthcare consolidation between insurers and providers, such in the CBS Aetna case just last year.
So, sorry, continue.
Okay, so that's the second. The third is consumerization of healthcare. Patients assume more financial responsibilities for their healthcare costs due to higher premiums, copay, coinsurances, deductibles, and so on. So they would require more being informed. They are proactive and they require treatment experience as in other customer-based markets. And mainly so, and that's the main difference within the healthcare space, cost transparency. And cost transparency is a big issue from providers to caregivers. The next is technological innovation that, of course, I don't need to elaborate on that. That's very intuitive, more of which telehealth will play more and more, gain more and more ground. And then most importantly, I guess, the emergence of new disruptors, big and small. from startup companies with new technologies and approaches down to huge entities turning the tide towards new business models. For instance, Amazon, along with JP Morgan, just announced that they are coming with a new health plan for their employees. They call it Heaven, and eventually would provide that for the entire country. So that's another one. I can go on and on, but that's the basis of it.
Well, Heaven is I don't know whether I would choose, that name for something that needs to kill people, but fine with us. Um, so if you um, can you provide us a few examples for new ideas and new technologies that we are expected to see in the upcoming years as a result of all of the tides and processes that you just described?
Yeah, well, to answer this, I have to choose one of many or a couple of many. So I would say that prevention and early detection, that's a key disruptive element that we would look for and see emerging. Advances in early detection will likely enable interventions for chronic diseases and other at early stages before becoming more serious conditions. Then I would say customized treatments as to personalization, as I've mentioned before, which would be data powered and driven, will effectively match patients with customized drug cocktails, design therapies, and so on, even on an equal one basis, just as was in the last FDA case. A drug was approved for only one child, a specific drug for her. Yeah. Then probably digital therapeutics, including those focused on behavior modification, like the previous speaker was mentioning in automotive space.
Yeah.
So behavior modification is a big coming thing. And then, of course, precision intervention that marry the costs to outcome benefits. So it's a very broad technology that we would see coming and become investing in, from data-driven to nanotechnology. And investors would need to choose their focus, because one cannot invest in all types of innovation. So this is where it comes from.
So that brings me to my next question. A few years ago, if you wanted to come as an investor into the healthcare market, you needed to make a decision whether you're going to invest in, classic medical devices companies, or, like when you were at Elron, you decided to go with medical devices, 510K or PMA companies. You had a model, let's invest in a company, try to get regulatory approval, and then sell it before we go and identify before we get into the reimbursement process, and let someone else deal with that and the commercialization of the product. Others chose to go with drugs, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We know how to do it. We know when is a good time to take the company public or to sell it. And we had like some protocols of how you invest in life science companies, when to come in, when to get out, who are the potential acquirers. Now you mentioned names like Amazon, like Walmart, that now they're not still investing in those technologies, but they are looking into specific plans. How do you view the profile of investors in this market a few years from now, assuming those changes will indeed become part of this market?
Yeah, that's a good question. And while discussing these type of unknowns with our peers, it seems that everyone is puzzled quite now. Yes, unlike in other fields, traditionally in the medical arena, requires more capital and more time. So it depends on the DNA, I would say, of the investor and investment vehicle. Typically, VC has a anywhere between, say, 5 to 7 years of investment activity. So a typical startup meets a VC investor halfway through of the VC vintage period. So the VC type of investors will probably invest in data-driven ventures that would turn into probably M&As or other collaborations sooner than, say, wet quote unquote devices. So one would have to choose his according to his investment DNA to choose the profile. My favorite play to go would be data-driven medicine rather than continue with a PMA with devices.
Okay, interesting. Um, let's say, if we continue to work together for additional 12 years, we'll see where we are at that point. That would be interesting to check. Thank you very much for being with us, Zvika.
Thank you for having
And
me.
I will conclude this session and let my partner, Ofer Ben Yehuda, take it from here. Thanks, everyone.